The program that you're about to hear contains material that may be offensive to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Go ahead. Make my day.
2, 1, 0.
Hello and welcome to Right and Writer, the official podcast of the Washington Free Beacon. I'm your host, Elizabeth Harrington. You can follow me on Twitter at LizWFB. Free Beacon podcast is available on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a review. Joining me from the right today is Free Beacon Editor-in-Chief Matthew Continetti. You may remember him from such mainstream media programs as Meet the Press Daily and The Daily Show. You can follow him on Twitter at Continetti. Hello, Matt.
Hello, Liz.
And further to Matt's right is Free Beacon President Aaron Harrison, who doesn't say anything other than as a fact stater. We're not exactly sure what he does around the office, but he signs the checks, and that's good enough for us. Hello, Harrison.
Well, here's a fact for you, Liz. I think this newfound love of Starbucks has actually turned me into a soy boy, because my new triple venti soy double shot of espresso latte has started to really affect me.
All right. Congrats on finishing dry January. You survived.
I did.
Not
I
a
did.
single
We're
drink,
Still here.
I
We're
heard.
still here. And let me tell you, February.
Fake news.
February, not dry.
He had dry January except for January 1st, and then any occasion would involve wine for dinner. That was his dry January.
Listen, it's a struggle for us all. It's a disease. Don't judge me.
And returning to the program today is the chairman of the Free Beacon, Michael Goldfarb, international man of mystery and licensed Republican consultant. He always keeps our panelists in line. Hello, Goldfarb.
Hello, Liz.
Up first on Right and Writer, border negotiations are going nowhere fast, as Nancy Pelosi says there's not going to be any wall money in the legislation. President Trump said trying to get a deal with the libs is a waste of time. Quote, I think Nancy Pelosi is hurting our country very badly by doing what she's doing. And ultimately, I think I've set the table very nicely, Trump said, as he will likely declare a national emergency to build the wall when government funding runs out. NBC News has been moaning that the shutdown has derailed the House Democratic agenda, as the top issue on Capitol Hill has been immigration, quote, drowning out the message that House Democrats wanted to discuss after their midterm victory in November. Matt, silver lining.
I've been saying that since the beginning,
right,
that they had this big agenda, and now they spent the first, it will be 7 weeks of the year dealing with border security. You're right. It looks like Trump is definitely moving in the direction of declaring a national emergency on the border and then using that authority granted to him through statute to repurpose funds from the Pentagon to begin construction of the wall. That will be immediately challenged in the courts. Now, there's some question about how long it will take the Ninth Circuit to enjoin that repurposing of funds. So there might be, 6 to 8 weeks where they can build some wall before the Ninth Circuit says you can't do it anymore, and then it's in the courts. So Trump might get some wall, and of course he'll get the issue in 2020, and he will be able to keep the government open. So it looks actually like a pretty good deal for Trump. I don't know how good a deal for the precedent of declaring a national emergency for policy reasons rather than, an actual natural disaster.
Harrison, I kind of like the idea, though, of moving the wall they built in San Diego to the red states in Texas that Trump floated yesterday.
Just let the ones that...
Then they'll be begging for it.
Well, listen, that is why we have a United States. The states get to decide what their own fate will be.
Bingo.
So this whole debate just kind of reminds me. I was flipping through channels last night. I come across this movie called World War Z, which is about a zombie apocalypse.
Brad Pitt.
But here's the hook to the whole movie, is that there's one country that was ahead of all the other countries because it built a wall around itself. That country was Israel in the movie. And they were like, ended up becoming the hub of civilization because they built a wall.
So timely.
So it's kind of like what we're dealing with here.
It's interesting because the libs are using Game of Thrones as kind of an absurd example against the wall, because they're like, why do we need a wall if the dead ice dragon can blow it up? Okay, but then there's also the counter example of World War Z, because the zombies don't get in there, do they?
No,
that's the only safe place.
So, he says eventually. I think there was a breach
they sneak
eventually.
through.
But
Sonny.
Yeah, I think they had to like pile up by the millions or something to get over, which seems a little far fetched.
Well, it gave them
to
more
me,
time.
You know. I don't understand how the zombies got so strategic.
Plot hole.
Well, hold it. Once Herman Cain is on the Federal Reserve Board, which I am really hoping for, he can then begin to go back to his policy idea because he wanted a moat.
Right.
He wanted
See,
alligators
the wall
in the
is
moat.
just plan
he
A.
wanted
We
electrical.
still need plan B.
Well,
know.
I've
it all.
got the solution. It's 900 feet tall, 900 feet deep, and 900 feet wide. That is a 999 plan that I can get behind.
I mean, aren't we just desperate for Herman Cain to return to American public life?
Absolutely.
I am so excited.
Gold Farm.
You know, I think there's like a grand bargain to be struck here, and people who've been following events closely the last few weeks, what we do is we create a path for the dreamers, but we murder the infants that they're bringing across the border. We abort them as soon as they step
During
foot.
delivery.
Yeah,
We're gonna get to that.
Once their anchor baby status has been achieved,
Yeah,
then you can abort them.
if we don't get them when they're crowning, then we'll have a conversation with the doctors,
Anchor fetus.
and we'll figure out what to do.
It's not, make sure it's comfortable.
Well, no, the Democrats have moved on. They're no longer fetuses. They're just babies. They're just infants now that they're killing.
Yeah, you know,
Okay, that's the Goldfarb plan.
I like it. I like it.
It's a grand bargain.
Nancy Pelosi can get behind that. Up next, President Trump is at odds with his intel community, or is that what the fake news wants you to think? Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates, along with CIA Director Gina Haspel, testified before Congress that North Korea is unlikely to give up its nuclear weapons. ISIS is intent on resurging. Iran isn't currently pursuing a nuclear weapon, and climate change is a national security threat. Trump tweeted, "The intelligence people seem to be extremely passive and naive when it comes to the dangers of Iran. They are wrong." However, after meeting with the intel chiefs, Trump said they were totally misquoted, and they said it was fake news. Harrison, what else is new?
Well, we know Iran wants the nuke.
Right.
They're like dedicated to it.
Oh,
They
ISIS
they
wants to
have
come back. Controversial.
Well, the funny thing is like this is just what the Democrats have been arguing for forever, right? That like, you know, when Obama's president, ISIS is in retreat, it's defeated. Don't worry about ISIS anymore. When Trump's president, ISIS is coming back. You know, I just think that it's just like we know what their ends are, so we need to prevent their ends we need to prevent them achieving their ends by any means necessary.
Matt.
A few things about this. One is I was struck at just how political the national intelligence estimate was, and not just on its conclusions about North Korea and Iran and the deal, which I mean are true. They're empirically verifiable, but it went on and saying, well, you know, the American foreign policy of isolationism and unilateralism is endangering us in this time. And then it's the job of the national intelligence community to speak truth to power. I mean, how cliched is that?
They sound like a CNN
you're supposed
contributor.
you're supposed to create products that the decision makers can use. So,
Right.
So that's point number one. Point number two is I get incredibly frustrated. The media said, the intelligence community repudiates Trump. Trump then, of course, takes the bait and says it's fake news, and you get into this huge argument over the media coverage of the testimony. If you actually look at what they said, it's not that controversial. Mm-hmm. Anyone should be skeptical that North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons. At the same time, Trump is trying to get them to give up the nuclear weapons. Then it's, Iran. Iran is technically in compliance with the deal. Well, why wouldn't they be? It was a bad deal. It was the sweetest deal they could ever hope for, and they're just waiting it out.
Right.
They think that, like the Democrats, they think the Democrats are guaranteed victory in 2 years, so then when the Democrat comes back, they'll get more of their money, right? That's not the issue, whether they're in compliance. The issue is all the other horrible things that the regime is doing, by the way, which the intel chiefs talked about.
Right.
So I don't think that there was much difference here. But then it gets all tied up into Trump's existential conflict with the national media.
Farm.
I totally agree. I mean, they're in compliance while they're spinning centrifuges,
building
while
missiles.
they're building missiles, while they're
funding terrorism.
Right. So yeah, they've always been in compliance. The deal didn't put such restrictions on them that they felt compelled to cheat. That's the fucking problem.
Gave them the money to do
it. That was why Trump said it was the worst deal ever, and that's why he pulled out. And so Gina Haspel was right. Yes, they're technically in compliance. Okay, fine. That's the start. That's not the rebuke. I mean, I think the media framed it wrong, and then of course Trump does his thing, and then that's all the media really wants at the end, right?
Well,
they want him to get provoked so they can then do the headline of, oh, look at him going against the intelligence community. Nicole Wallace was saying, oh, I've never seen this before. Treason.
Well, treason. I think that actually is the end game for the media, is to just is to just smear Trump, and any conflicting narrative throws a wrench into that plan. I mean, I'm just kind of struck by the whole, we're pulling out of the nuclear treaty with Russia. Why?
Right.
Because, I don't know, the good faith Russians are suddenly framed as being of good faith in this. Meanwhile, the reason we're pulling out is because they won't destroy the freaking missiles.
Right.
So it's this whole paradox of Russia's good when we want them to be, when they serve the means of embarrassing the president, and they're bad when they serve the means of embarrassing the president.
The one I saw this week that was amazing too is the story about how the Russians have put a convicted felon money launderer on the governing body at the UN that manages the Organization for the Prevention of Chemical Weapons, right? So this is the deal Obama struck with the chemical weapons group that won the fucking Nobel Peace Prize for a deal that left Assad with chemical weapons that he continued to use against his people, right? And the Russians put this convicted felon on the board. And who's up in arms about that? Not all the people on TV every day talking about the Russians. It's not Adam Smith. It's not Adam Schiff. It's not those people. The people who are pissed off about it are Ted Cruz and Tom Cotton and those kind of people. The same people who are pissed off about the INF treaty and saying, you know what? It's time to put a bunch of fucking missiles in Europe. So it is a little bananas the way, media.
Speaking of which, breaking news. Republicans are seizing on liberal positions to paint Democrats as radical, because the bigger news after a governor of a major state endorses infanticide is really the reaction of outraged conservatives, otherwise known as people who have souls. The gruesome realities of abortion and the extreme positions held by the left are becoming apparent after Virginia delegate Kathy Tram confirmed her bill would allow for babies to be killed up until the moment of birth while the mother is dilating. But why stop there? Quote, "If a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen," said Governor Ralph Northam, a pediatrician. "The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother." Oh, but don't worry. Northam thinks it's always good to get a, quote, second opinion when deciding to kill a baby after it is born. Matt, what do we even say here?
Well, it's interesting because the Democrats have become more comfortable in stating their position and their view on Roe v. Wade. And the sad thing is these practices that they're talking about are legal under the
They're
Roe
already happening,
regime. Yeah. And, and the Kermit Gosnell, the abortionist who was sent to prison in Pennsylvania a few years ago, this is exactly the sort of thing he did. And it was gruesome, and the jury got viscerally upset about it, and it's disgusting. And it's the very fact that the Democrats now are more open about it and celebrating it. A bill like the one that was introduced and failed in Virginia passed in New York, and that night the Empire State Building lit itself up in pink to support women's health, or
women's healthcare
choose your euphemism, reproductive rights. It's sad. The only silver lining in all of this is abortions are falling. There are fewer clinics, and we're beginning to change the judiciary.
Right.
And it is just a fact that if Roe is ever overturned and or gutted, that would create political space for the states to create, and so then the create whatever regime they want, as gruesome as it might be. And so then the real battle begins, in my view.
Harrison, Matt mentioned the Gosnell case. Of course, the media treated that as a local crime story. So it's not surprising that they don't even quote the controversial statements from Northam, and they just say, oh, it's Republicans pouncing.
Well, look, this is a tough issue for me because back in the day I used to be kind of what somebody would call a pro-choicer. I was very, very soft on the issue. But then something very important happened in my life, and my wife gave birth to our daughter, little Ivanka. Now, at the time, and I can't wait to tell her this story one day, and to appreciate the life that she has been given, is that when we gave birth to this little clump of cells, and it came out, and all of a sudden, it's wrapped in a little hospital blanket, but the clump of cells started saying, "Hey, this is not a good enough blanket for me. I want Chanel. I want Coco Chanel." I want some Gucci up in here, and it was at that moment I had to take a step back, and I left the room to consult with the primary care physician.
You had the conversation.
These are the types of conversations
that's what the
that are being
conversation
had.
was about with Dr. Northam.
Honestly, when you are expecting one thing, you get another thing, and it takes you a little bit aback, and you have to have these conversations on what to do. But the fact is that I thought long and hard, and I said, listen. There is one thing, the President of the United States, he raised a smart alpha female with great taste and great fashion sense.
Great figure.
Great figure. And I was like,
He
you know
raised
what?
that. It's totally
if he can do
responsible.
it, I can do it too. And there's no sense in aborting good fashion sense. That is a fact. So that's what I learned out of this, and now I'm a staunch pro-lifer.
Wow, inspiring. Goldfarb.
I think Aaron actually zeroed in on an interesting issue here, which is once the baby is out of the womb and has been made comfortable, at what point does the man get a say? I mean, are we a part of this conversation? Because according to Governor Northam, it's still a conversation between the woman and her doctor. So the father's standing there looking at his newborn child, his pride and joy, and does he get to have a say in the conversation about whether to execute the child?
Yeah, I mean, I think he does. Look, I'm a big men's rights type of guy. So long as it doesn't conflict with the health of the mother, I think that this is look, old school. Back in the day, the man used to have this conversation with the doctors over a cigar in the smokers' lounge. When I had my conversation with the doctors, we had to go 25 feet outside the hospital,
into the street.
I want to be a part of the death panel committee.
Yes,
these are the death.
We should
panels.
get a vote.
Palin was right. All right. We beat up on millennials a lot around here, so we thought it was time for some outreach and so we can better understand them. So joining us is Right and Writer's very own generational ambassador, Paul Crookston. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Liz.
I hear you have a report on something called the Fire Festival.
Yeah, I do. So, as some of you may have heard, there's this thing called the Fire Festival, and I take it to understand you don't totally understand what this
is
thing
the
was.
Fire Festival, and it's not even spelled like fire.
No, I didn't know how to say it,
It's
but I heard
F-Y-R-E.
Right, F-Y-R-E.
Yes.
So
Not a
what is
word.
it?
So the Fire Festival was a failed music festival in the Bahamas that was put on by a guy, Billy McFarland, who's now in prison for fraud. And the idea was to be an island getaway on the private island that he bought.
Okay.
But all of this was promoted completely dishonestly and led to a bunch of millennials being down in the Bahamas with no music festival to attend and a bunch of FEMA tents.
Who did he say was going to be appearing at this millennial festival?
Some people you may know of, like Major Lazer and Blink 182.
Blink 182.
I've heard of Blink 182.
Blink 182. That's not what millennials.
What is
are
Major
listening to,
Lazer?
is
What
it?
does he or she do?
Major Lazer is a electronic music group.
Or they? We
Yeah.
don't want to gender them.
Yeah, well, so what are they? They're EDM.
Yes.
See?
Yes.
I know that.
Wow.
There we go.
So those were the headliners.
Yeah, so
When
it
was
wasn't.
this,
It wasn't.
by the way?
So
Yeah.
this was in 2017,
Oh,
and
wow.
it wasn't about.
It's been around for a while, and I do not know what it is.
Yeah. What's interesting about Fire is it wasn't about the music at all. It was a
Oh.
status thing. It was about millennials and their sort of like status games on social media that sort of led to this snowball of
Okay,
thousands
so how?
of people.
But
saying
how
they
would
have to go.
they wanted the? So you gained status by saying that you were attending this private island to watch the laser people.
No, now listen. I think we're losing a little bit of focus here. The fact is that this was promoted on social media from the hottest chicks in the world. Okay, this was
Nice.
this was Kendall Jenner, this was Bella Hadid, this was all the big time.
So were they in
So how
on
did
it?
this guy get
yeah.
them to do that? Was that explored in these documentaries you've reviewed?
Yes, so there's 2 documentaries
Poor
that are
Paul.
out, on Hulu and Netflix about this event. They came out in the same week, and both kind of drew a lot of attention. And what ended up, one of the things that kind of comes through watching the documentaries is that the promotion of the festival really was the festival. They went down, they brought all of these Instagram influencers and models down to the Bahamas, and they did this, really exciting photo shoot and video promo, and they talked about how it would be the most exclusive, most incredible party ever. And that was the Fire Festival that everybody saw. There was no...
Nothing was actually happening.
Nothing
there.
about it was real.
That is social media, though. That is perfect.
Yeah,
so
they
when
did
they
not-
saw these things on their social media accounts, the millennials then booked a ticket. And I'm
Yes.
seeing what they're seeing now, and that is
Goldfarb
very
is Google
appealing.
imaging search.
Right.
Look, it
He
was-
approves of the Fire
And
Festival.
so then they booked a
I
ticket to
should
go
have
to the
gone to
island.
this thing.
material.
It was marketed basically as a giant millennial orgy.
You're
on-
not a
on-
millennial. You're too old, Goldfarb.
No, he's right on borderline. No, it was a giant millennial orgy held on Pablo Escobar's private island that everybody was going to pay $5,000 to $50,000 to go to and live in luxury and be laid by all these beautiful women. And in fact, it was just a giant prison colony, is what they really landed on.
And the only guy who got laid was the head of customs in the Bahamas.
No, he didn't even get laid.
Yeah, well,
The
hold
thing-
on. So this,
yeah.
I want our generational ambassador
Yeah,
to give
he's
us
the
more
expert
reporting.
here.
So I think Harrison's description was very good, right, as far as what I've been able to glean from the
Fact
various
stater.
references. But then what happened to the organizers? So people get there and they show up, and then what happens?
So they got there and discovered a bunch of disaster relief tents on a parking lot, essentially, and no musical acts
so
to
great.
speak of.
I love the Fire
Yeah,
Festival.
why aren't these guys heroes?
the Men of the Year? Yeah.
Well, if you listen to our other wonderful podcast, The Subbeacon, you'll find out that they are heroes to
Oh,
some.
I'm sure for some Nietzscheans, yeah.
But what ended up happening was they were actually in danger. The Bahamians had actually put out hits on the organizers
Now
because
what-
they hadn't been paid.
Oh, yeah, they hadn't been properly bribed to or paid to use the island.
Well, all the workers, it was all local workers that were like putting things together,
And so they
just weren't paid.
they took hits out on the organizers.
Yeah.
I didn't watch
Anyone
till the
die?
end. Wow.
Well, it turns out, it turned out that slavery is actually also illegal in the Bahamas. So
Who knew?
And then so
this was all still the first thing, though. 2017. Is it now a thing? Is there why are we still talking about it?
We're talking about it mainly because of the documentaries that came out. I think there's
Fire
a bunch
2.
of inside.
the sequel.
Coming up.
So actually, the con artist that organized all this, he actually had this idea for the elements, earth, wind, fire, that like there would be a different one every few years based on a different Greek element,
man.
and it would be all very mysterious and. All of this kind of went much, much beyond what he actually was
Okay.
able to
now,
do.
did he
obviously.
organize it as a con? Did he know that he was going to be, or did it turn out to be like
just
the
fell
the
through?
Stonehenge concert in Spinal Tap,
Right.
where they think they're going to get Stonehenge, but then the little thing and the little person come out? Was it a scam from the beginning, or was it just a
Good
fine
question.
noble idea gone wrong?
So he was definitely lying and using elements of scamming from the beginning. There is something curious, though, about the fact that the rubber had to meet the road eventually. So on some level, he knew he needed to deliver something. And the movie is really about, in many ways, his flee from reality and his refusal to sort of look at reality and admit that, like, this is going to go bad. There's even a part where a guy who had been to prison comes and talks to him about, like, the repercussions of this, and he literally describes what prison is like, and Billy McFarlane says, I'm not going to go there. So he just is defiant of the reality that he was facing on a certain level, and he thought the lying and everything would just kind of like work out in the end.
Well, it was just kind of like it was like Wiener. There were several points where he could have jumped off this whole thing safely, but his response, which was left out of the
Bring the
documentaries,
cameras in.
was when he was warned that they were running out of money and there was no way they could do it. He wrote an email to one of his partners and said, it, bro, let's do it and be legends.
It's a very writer thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, I've learned so much.
Yeah,
Thank you, Paul.
generational ambassador.
Oh, you're welcome.
Up first at our culture round, he walks around Union Station scribbling down names of scofflaw restaurants onto straw wrappers and placing them in his back pocket. Later, he'll take one to see if it floats in water, a telltale sign of plastic. His name is Zach Rybarczyk, and he's DC's straw narc on patrol, warning restaurants they will be fined $800 for providing plastic straws come July. The Amazon Post spent a day on patrol with the enforcer of DC's plastic straw ban, who naturally keeps a metal straw for his personal use in his backpack. At Sakura, Japan, Rybarczyk explained the new rules to a cashier as a man waiting for his lunch looked on in disgust. Quote, "What is this, California now?" grumbled the customer, who declined to give his name. "All these laws are just spreading from California. Everything is getting taken away from us. Man, this is so stupid." Matt, DC homicides were up 64% in January. Glad they have their priorities in
Of course.
order.
No, that's exactly right, Liz. You have the homicide going up. You have homelessness, vagrants. You have open air, communities of homeless, mentally ill people, and yet what does DC make a priority? Enforcing the straw ban.
It's so insane.
This is police brutality.
It is.
And
$800?
And just when you said that he has a metal straw, who drinks from a metal? Can you, your
Freaks.
teeth on the metal
Sickos. They need to be institutionalized.
metal.
The libs
straws?
are not well.
And I
Harrison.
like that quote you too, because that guy.
Oh,
that
this
you quote,
is me. I love this guy.
Yeah,
He's like,
he
"This is all
points to the
California."
solution, which is Calexit.
You're right.
I'm sorry. That's
You've been saying
that's
this
what
for
we
a
have to
while.
go to.
You're
That's
right.
the only
You're
way out for
absolutely
us.
right. Harrison,
Well, I
you
read.
use a metal straw.
I'm going to start. No, I'll probably just smuggle some in through the porous border to our south, is my guess, is what's going to ultimately end up happening. And I'll be carrying them around in my backpack.
Build the wall,
and
and straws will fall.
Exactly. I mean, it is thoroughly repulsive, the fascistic mindset of the left. I read this quote from the mayor of D.C., Muriel Bowser, where she swore that she wanted to make using plastic straws, disposable plastic straws in public, socially unacceptable on the level of smoking. Now, lady, newsflash, smoking is freaking awesome, and you always look cool with a cigarette in any situation, and also
look pretty cool with a green plastic straw out of your mouth.
you
too.
you do look cool when you're drinking out of a plastic
So
straw.
rebel-
If you're
it's like
drinking
the rebel without a cause.
totally. Look, that's going to
Instead of
be
a
you're going to be the new
cigarette,
bad boy.
It's going to be the straw.
This is going to be the new Marlboro man. We should have a free beacon. We should start selling free beacon
Hey,
straws.
that's a good idea for styles.
In the store, we cut a promo of a new Marlboro man just drinking a straw with his triple soy Starbucks latte.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be a new thing for the right. But I just thought that, like, this is social shaming. This is fascism. This is exactly how it works. You make it unacceptable to just live a normal life, and you make everybody conform to your fantasy land in which you want to operate and just destroy people's lives.
All right, up next, the Super Bowl is on Sunday. Tom Brady will try to make history, becoming the oldest quarterback at the age of 41 to win, 17 years after he won his first championship in 2002, when Jared Goff was 7 years old. Goldfarb, who you got, Rams or Patriots?
I think the Patriots are just going to demolish them.
Me too.
I mean, the Rams are not good. The Eagles beat them at the end of the year there. The Saints should have beat them, as anybody who had eyes in their head would have seen. I'm just torn on the Tom Brady thing. I really am, because on the one hand, Tom Brady is like, he's America, he's a fucking winner,
dominant.
and that's why everybody hates him. Does he cheat? Yeah, he cheats when he needs to.
You do what you gotta
but
do.
you do what you got to do to win.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's like he's been around for a long time, and he's been getting it done, and I respect that. On the other hand, I hate the Boston sports fans, and I
Right.
can't stand them anymore. And I want, what is it, mass exit? I want them out of the country. You know, so
Just get rid of all the libs.
but like it's not like L.A. people being happy makes
coast.
me happy. So you know, it's
Trust
a
me,
random
Goldfarb,
war.
LA people just won't care. Okay.
I know they don't have any fans.
It's like not even a real team.
Did you see the great Wall Street Journal story about how the major use of the goat emoji is all tied to Tom Brady?
right.
Whenever Brady has a game, the use on Twitter of goat emojis like spikes.
I thought that
Right.
was Farrakhan. I thought Farrakhan was the greatest of all time.
You missed that.
Harrison.
No, I think Mike is onto something for the gamblers out there. I think this is Brady's to lose. Now, I will caution everybody.
What's the line?
The line, I
No, I
believe,
don't
is
know.
about
Should've looked that up.
Yeah,
which
2.5,
is
3 points.
absurd.
Look, I don't think it's absurd because if you look at the history of the Patriots, they always play a close Super Bowl. Like they're except for last year was as close to a blowout as you could get, and that thing was still
Still came down to
competitive
the
to the
last
last 5
minute,
minutes
yeah.
or so. So look, I think we're going to have a close game. I think we're going to have a high scoring game. But you know, in terms of Brady is like one of these athletes that has beaten me into submission.
Me too.
I went from
I used
like
to hate him, and now I kind of like him.
I went from being indifferent to hating the hype around him. He was kind of like a Derek Jeter or a Chipper Jones in my life, where it was just like I can't stand the hype. It's just ridiculous to continue to beat my teams into a pulp.
like-
But after a while, like 20 years, he's been doing this, and he's been
Right.
winning, and he's
Oh,
awesome.
it was when that MAGA hat was in the locker. That's when your mind was
Look,
changed.
I'm
on
not
Brady.
I'm not gonna say that didn't have an effect on my outlook on Brady. But anyway, I look for a big day from Tom. It's probably going to be a win. Also, always good to see Gronk happy.
All right, finally, Mick Jagger's ex, film producer Noor Al-Fala, 23, was spotted at dinner in L.A. with Clint Eastwood, 88. Al-Fala, who after dating Jagger, 75, was linked to 57-year-old billionaire Nicholas Berggren, maybe said that wrong, might have a type, but she insists her and Eastwood are just friends. Quote, "We're not dating," Al-Fala told Daily Mail. "There is no relationship. We're family friends, and my family was there, and that's it." Eastwood has been linked to girlfriend Christina Sandera, 33 years his junior, and he has 8 children split between 6 women. Matt, he still got it.
Clint Eastwood is amazing. I think we should just mark him as like a historical monument of America. I saw this story and I just thought the best part of this story was something we can't reproduce on the radio, which was the image of him driving this 23-year-old home. She was in the back seat and Clint was driving, and the expression on his face was like right out of Gran Torino. It was like Clint Squint, you know.
He's just like a horny Uber driver.
I love this man. It's amazing. I love it. I love
You
it.
ever realize you just f***ed with the wrong guy?
Harrison?
Well, I'm brought to the funniest thing I saw online this week was an article on Barstool Sports by the blogger Large, where he just titled it "The older the pickle, the stronger the juice." So, I mean, what more can you say
there
than
you
that?
have it.
Clearly, this has nothing to do with fame or epic fortune. This is all about older dudes still staying in the game, still able to score the young tail. So, you know, props, kudos to guys like Eastwood, guys like Mick Jagger, who I believe this is sloppy seconds for Clint. Maybe fifths,
man,
maybe
he's
sloppy eighths.
13
It sounds
years
like she's
older.
kind of gotten around. That's all I'm saying.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's edition of Right Rider. I'd like to give a special thanks to our producer, LB Ford, of course, our Free Beacon guests, Matthew Continetti, Aaron Harrison, Michael Goldfarb, and Paul Crookston. Remember, find us on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Just search for Free Beacon. Please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave a positive review, like listener Ashley S., who says, "Probably need a little more Goldfarb, though. The people demand it."
Yes.
Until next time.